Welcome to Surviving to Thriving with Clare Downham, where I share insights on the inside-out nature of life so you can stop the inner critic running the show and step into thriving in every aspect of your life. I hope you find this episode helpful. Morning, everyone. I wanted to tell a little story today. It's quite a funny story, and it's got nothing to do with business or anything I often talk about, but just a story about how that inner critical voice can show up and just divert us onto paths. And quite literally, this story is about paths, onto paths that are not really helpful. And I guess the invitation really in this session is for you to start to reflect on where you're being diverted by that niggling voice in your head. And I'm going to apologize actually for the quality of the video, because I wanted to do this video with the background of where I'm staying at the moment, but unfortunately you can't really see it because the sea, or rather the Menai Straits, which is the bit of water between Bangor and Anglesey, is right behind me outside the window. I'm staying in a little Airbnb. So I thought it would be lovely to have the view, but the view's not showing up. It's too bright, but you can see it's beautiful. I'm in such a beautiful place in the moment. So this little story happened on Saturday, I believe, a few days ago from where we are now. And I, ladies, you'll get this. You get to the day where your fringe just reaches the point, if you have a fringe, or if you've had a fringe, where you just have to have it cut because it just has got to the point where it just won't do anything, and it's in your face and you can't see. And Saturday morning was that day for me. And I woke up and I was trying to get ready, and I was looking at my fringe going, oh my God, I'm going to Wales next week. I'm going away from home. I'm not going to have time to get my fringe cut. The rest of my hair desperately needs cutting as well. But anyway, that's by the by. So I thought, you know what, I'll text. So this is me listening to that nudge, that inner knowing kind of nudge. I'll just text the hairdresser. It's Saturday. She could be busy. She's generally busy. She's a lovely hairdresser. Highly recommend her. If you want my hairdresser's number in Farsley, hit me up for that because she's lovely. And I just dropped her a message and she said, oh yeah, I can see you at 10:30. And the timing couldn't have been better. I love it when these little synchronicities happen. I like to appreciate those a lot of the time. And I recommend doing that. So I said so my fiance was walking down to football training with his son. And I said, I'll walk with you for company. And then I'll just loop round the park a couple of times and I'll walk back just in time to get to the hairdressers for 10:30. So I did that, walked down to football, and I started walking back. And I got to this junction where I could have gone towards the hairdressers, and then I like to do 5,000 steps. It's my little thing. We've all got a little thing like that, haven't we? I like to do 5,000 steps every day. And I thought when I get to the hairdressers, I'll just walk around the block where the hairdressers is, and then I'll walk in at 10:30, bang on time. Now, why didn't I do that? That was very calmly delivered to, I don't know, do thoughts live here? I'm not 100% sure. It was calmly delivered. It came with a sense of knowing, that inner knowing. However, very quickly, and this is something to really see, that when our inner knowing shows up, how quickly after that the inner critic comes in with its demands. And my God, they are like demands, aren't they? They really are very demanding. Like for me, that mine is generally about more. You should do more. So at that moment, instead of turning right and going towards the hairdressers, I heard this voice in my head that said, oh, if you walk really fast, you can go all the way around there and you'll get more steps in. And anyway, if you walk around and round the block of shops where the hairdressers is, people are going to think you're stupid or crazy. You don't want to be doing that. You don't want other people to think you're mad, including the hairdresser who might have seen me walking past her window several times on my little loop of the block. So that all came in. So what was there? There was some sense of I will be judged by others. There was this do more, do more, do more. There's always a bit of do more in mine. And so off I went. I turned left instead of turning right. So off I go on this path all the way around. And it's getting closer and closer to 10:30. And I'd put a little alarm on at 10:20 to nudge me. And by this point, I'd gone so far out that I had to run to get back to the hairdressers. So by the time I arrived at the hairdressers, I was a sweaty mess. Quite literally, I was a sweaty mess. I had to quickly, obviously in the hairdressers, it's really warm. It was cold outside. Rip all my coat off, my jumper and everything. And I said, I'm really sorry I'm late. I mean, I was only like 3 minutes late, maybe. I don't really like to be late. Who likes to be late? But how funny that if I had listened to that actual knowing, that inner knowing that was there, I would have gone the other way. I would have gone straight to the hairdressers and been there in plenty of time and had a much nicer experience of getting to the hairdressers and trying to run. I have this like, you call it a fanny pack in America, don't you, if you're listening from America? A bum bag, we call it here. I kind of strap it across my body here. And that was like bouncing up and down, and everything else was bouncing up and down. Ladies that are watching, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And it was just ridiculous, really. And if I just listened to that first nudge. So what can we see about this? Well, first of all, that most of us nonsense. All of us have these nudges. Inner knowing is what I call it. You might call it intuition. You might call it wisdom. You might call it universal intelligence. I don't really care what you call it. It doesn't really matter. But it comes with a sense of, it just feels right, doesn't it? It comes with calm. You're not agitated. It's very present. I always find that those intuitive nudges are things that I could enact right now. Like the things they're about decisions I'm making right now. They're about the next thing I could do right now. They're not generally about way in the future, and they're definitely not about the past. Those intuitive nudges are about right now. There's something right now. And I think that's the key, is to see that inner knowing will always have this deep sense of presence and nowness, whereas the inner critic is often wrapped, well, I'd say pretty much always wrapped up in the future or the past, or I mean, for me, just doing more. I mean, I'd love to know from you, what is yours? Like, what's yours underlying, like that voice in your head? And please remember, of course, that isn't you. Interestingly, if you're relating to this video and you're relating to an inner critic that says more, or an inner critic that says you're going to be judged by other people, then what does that tell you about that? Well, it tells us all that it's not us, that's nothing to do with us, that there's something consistent. When I work with so many people about this, people have the same things going on. This is why I'm focusing now on this being the route to thriving, moving from inner critic to inner knowing, because I'm seeing that is what is going on for people all the time, is the same. It's comparison, it's judgment or fear of judgment from others. It's fear-based, always fear-based. It's always fear-based. Mine is all about more. You're never doing enough. It comes with a sense of never being enough. And that it kind of has us do very similar things. And everybody seems to have it. I'm speaking to people at the moment I was speaking to someone yesterday who's 25. I've got a young client who's 29. I've got clients in their 50s and 60s and everything in between. And I've worked with a lot of people over time. And this thing we're calling the inner critic, and we're only doing that to give us a way to talk about it. It's thought, it's a type of thinking that most people have. I don't think anybody, doesn't have it. I was chatting to my daughter, and she's super confident in every aspect of life. And I said to her, do you have an inner critic? And she said, oh my God, yeah. It's just like, everybody's got that. And I used to think it was very much about how you've been parented in terms of like the treat 'em mean, keep 'em keen parenting I talk about in terms of people who are midlife now, who were raised in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, we had a lot of that. In that critical parenting. But it turns out that it doesn't really, it's not just that. It's so many different styles of parenting. Somewhere along the line, we've all learnt these types of thinking that the inner critic brings up. And I want you to know as well that when, like with the hairdresser story, the going to the hairdressers, I told you it's about pathways, you see, that every time that inner knowing comes up with that lovely feeling, have you noticed how it is predictable? Like a lovely teacher I learn a lot from, Dominic Scafidi, he said, it's predictable BS. Predictable BS. Predictably, when you have one of those intuitive, inner knowing, wisdom type nudges, predictably, the BS of the inner critic will come in and attempt derailment, particularly as you move into action, as you move into going outside this perceived comfort zone that we often have, as we go towards the edges of that, as we go to push ourselves into different aspects of business, different aspects of career progression, different things in relationships, perhaps asking that special person out or whatever, we will feel that the inner critic will come in very quickly and say, no, you can't do that. And I think for most people, particularly, I hang around with obviously with a lot of business owners, a lot of coaches and people like that, that is the one thing that is stopping them. If everybody followed their inner nudges, which for me, I feel quite emotional when I say this, it is love. It feels like love. The inner critic comes in with fear. And as Marianne Williamson says, you're either living in fear or you're living in love. Slightly misquoted probably, but I love it. So I hope that's been helpful today. And I'd love to hear from you if you have found it helpful. Or let me know what's going on with your inner critic, because I think they've all got a slightly different flavour, but there is a theme, a real theme running through most of it. So take care. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you again soon. Thank you so much for spending this time with me on Surviving to Thriving. I hope this session has been helpful. If it resonated, I'd love for you to follow me and maybe share this episode with someone you care about. Until next time, be kind to yourself and trust your inner knowing.